I'm one of Manchester's Green Badge tour guides, and there are now 20 of us Green Badge guides in the city. The training came around, and the sort of desire and the need for tour guides came around actually from, I think, a combination of the City Council and Marketing Manchester. Manchester had historically about 6 guides who were actively guiding, which for a city of 2.5 million people is really nothing, and there was a sort of big kind of feeling that if we had more guides we could perhaps get access to more buildings and just kind of sell the city perhaps in a different way. How I got involved was kind of strange alignment of circumstances. It started quite honestly with having a very bizarre conversation in a pub on a hot summer's night with the chap who became my tutor, Jonathan Schofield, who's a writer and also a guide here. And we were just chatting, and he said, I'm going to be running this course about people wanting to be, we're going to train people to become tour guides in Manchester. Why don't you apply? And I thought, well, why would I apply? I have no idea. And didn't sort of put it to one side thinking it's hot summer weather, wine, blah, blah, blah. And then the following day, I was talking to a colleague in the office who said, you should really do it. You love history, you love learning, really consider it. And I then sort of discussed it at length with friends and family, because it's a really big time commitment to do. It was over about 9 months, officially 2 sessions a week, but actually it took over. I mean, it really kind of took over your life. It felt like doing a history degree sort of in 9 months instead of over 3 years. We're in Manchester Town Hall. This building opened in 1877. It took 10 years to build, and it cost the minimal cost of £1 million, which is nothing. By the sort of early 1860s, Manchester had grown and grown and grown as a city. It was, the world's sort of first industrial city. We were making headlines all across the world. We were trading all across the world, and the city was growing. I mean, there was a massive population boom between 1800 and 1850 in Manchester, and in response to that, as the population grows and money comes into the city, the functions of a council, or as it was then called, a corporation, they grow. The old town hall was in King Street. It's not there now, it's the bottom of King Street, and they were just outgrowing it. They just didn't have enough space, so there was a need to have a bigger space, but there was also an opportunity for Manchester to build this amazing civic building that sort of said, this is Manchester and we've arrived and we're a world player. And they held a competition to design the building, which is, it's common practice today for big public buildings. You might hold an architectural competition. The architect who won, who did design the building, is called Alfred Waterhouse, and he's a Liverpudlian actually, but quite prolific in Manchester, did quite a lot of different things here in the city. The thing that always amazes me is he won, so it's said, on his very practical design. And yet if you look around the building, it feels at first look far from practical. It feels incredibly ornate and decorated with, amazing frescoes and gilding and, wonderful sculptures. And you think, gosh, it's all terribly ornate and gorgeous. But as a building, it works. And how it really works, the key to it is, if you think of the triangle roughly with 3 points, and he put a staircase on each point of the triangle, and that allowed sort of movement within the building. It allowed people to move around the building without interfering with what was going on the first floor, which is staterooms. So when you come in, you have this great big grand staircase, which if you're a visitor, you'd be swept upstairs to the Great Hall or one of the function rooms. If you're working here, you would use the staircases on the 3 corners, and that allowed for this movement of people without ever interfering. I think some of the town hall's most interesting features, I think they start outside actually. I think to really appreciate the building, you do need to start in Albert Square out. There's all sorts of things on the outside, from sculptures of and statues of people who've been influential with the city, going right back to the Roman times. There's a tiny little statue, well, it looks tiny, but it's not that tiny, it's perspective, over the front door of the Roman general Agricola, who it's said that Manchester was founded under, so 2,000 years ago. Other favourite features for me, the Great Hall, without doubt. I mean, the Great Hall has everything in it. It's got this amazing organ, which is just stunning, built specially for the building. It has a ceiling which just tells this tale of history and trade, a sort of amazing painted ceiling, and if you look up at the ceiling, it has the names of places that Manchester did business with, both here and all over the world, as far-flung as, Australia, Egypt, Japan, all kinds of places. And it's very kind of, it's very representative of the time, and I suppose perhaps the slight downside is, it does very much represent the Victorian, the sort of thinking about empire as well. But it also does show something of the kind of the lengths we went to. We wanted to establish trade links all across the world, and we did. It wasn't all just empire related. So I think the ceiling's amazing in the Great Hall, and then the paintings. There are these 12 fantastic murals on the wall. Ford Madox Brown, very prolific painter, and they are a sort of interpretation of the history of Manchester from the Romans through to the time when the building opened. Really, they're not necessarily completely accurate, and everyone interprets them differently. But I think they're definitely kind of show-stopping. You should go and see those. The clock tower of Manchester Town Hall isn't always open to the public, and last year it opened at Christmas for about 6 weeks. That came about through, I think, a willingness on behalf of both the City Council and people at the Town Hall and the guides who wanted to sort of see if we could do something with it. People generally love, whether you're a guide or you're a member of the public, people love accessing buildings that they can't normally access, and bits of buildings. It's that thing. People will pay money to go behind closed doors. There's a sort of excitement about it. I'd had an early discussion with somebody here at the Town Hall, along with a couple of other guides, and we were just exploring options, saying, if we sort of put together a tour, around the clock tower, and we took, are we able to take people up to the top? There were some very practical issues about you're going almost 300 feet up in the air. It's a lot of steps. It's a very confined space. There's 24 bells up there that you can't be touching and interfering with. There's a fantastic clock that you can literally, it's huge, it's enormous, you see. So there was all sorts of issues, but I think it grew out of a real willingness to promote it, and a real desire. I think we did 6 weeks of tours, 5 tours a day, and every tour was sold out. We could have done twice as many. So again, combination of circumstances, and I'm hoping we'll do them again. People just love going up there, and you get great views from the top. So that's how it came around. The clock tower I think it's 286 feet to the top, about 177 steps. I lost count by the time you've done it enough times, you just lose count. You just know. I think it's 177 steps. So it's one of the largest clock towers in the country. As you go up it, inside it, I think people are always a little, not quite sure what they're going to find. So there is a very narrow spiral staircase that you go up, but off it there are lots of different rooms that have things in it. So the first level is the ringing room, where the bell ringers would go, and that's the sort of big room with these 13 ropes coming down. Then further up the tower you have the room with the clock in it, and the clock is enormous. It's probably, I would say, about 4 feet high by maybe 8 or 9 feet across. It's like the back of your watch. It's like the back of your watch, but a million times bigger. So if you imagine the mechanics in the back of a watch of wheels and little cogs, it's like that, but it's huge. And people always just walk in and kind of go, oh, I can't believe it. So the clock is amazing. Clocks apparently, they're graded, clocks for buildings like this, on a scale of 1 to 10. Which relates to their size, and then when they get to 10 and they're bigger than that, they're called a special, and Manchester clock is a special. In terms of bells, we have the most amazing set of bells here. We have 23 bells plus the bell on the top, the sort of hour bell, Great Able as it's called, so that makes 24 bells. 24 bells in a civic building is huge, and it's really rare. There are very few buildings to rival this for bells in the UK. We're probably one of 6 with this number of bells. Somewhere similar, where a sort of similar number is probably somewhere like York Minster, so that sort of puts it into the context of the importance of it. The bell on the top is 8.5 tons, and I think fascinatingly, as you go up through the tower, there's this whole trapdoor system. And I always say to people, you have to remember that all of these bells were brought up from the ground floor. So when you come into the town hall, if you're standing in the main reception, if you look up, there's this beautiful ornate trapdoor. Now, obviously, when the bells were being installed, it was just a trapdoor. It's been subsequently decorated, but the bells were literally hoisted up on a rope and pulley system. And if you think 8.5 tons of metal is the biggest bell, that's huge. And that was just somebody, well, not somebody, a team of men winching it into position. And that probably would have taken 20, 24 hours to get to the top. So a huge feat, you know, massive sort of Victorian engineering feat. I recently did a clock tower tour that I was sort of primed about, and I think it's the most unusual thing that's happened to me. You get all sorts of odd things, but one of the strangest and nicest things I had was a very secretive phone call from a man who wanted to propose to his girlfriend at the top of the tower, and he asked if he could book it to do it, and in agreement with the people at the town hall, we said yes, okay. And she didn't know, she knew absolutely nothing about it, and I'd come on, it was on a Saturday and it was freezing cold, a bit snowy, and I was quite sort of alarmed, thinking, oh, what's going to happen? And he kept saying to me, I'm really nervous, I don't know whether I'm going to be able to do this. I thought, oh, you better have, mate, you know, we're going all this way up in the air and it's freezing cold. And then when we got to the top, I've never quite had this before. I never had somebody propose on a tour, so I was sort of thinking, I don't quite know what to do. I need to sort of hide, but where do I hide without it looking obvious? So I sort of went and hid, literally kind of under the large bell, and I thought, well, I'll let them have a walk around. There's a fantastic catwalk on the top, so you can walk 360 degrees around the tower. And I thought, he must ask her to wait. He must ask her at some point if I just wait. And they were walking out, and I must have waited about 10 minutes and thought, I don't think he's going to do it, he's chickened out. And unfortunately, just at the point I decided to sort of come out of hiding, so to speak, he was popping the questions and my timing was appalling. But it was nice. I mean, she was thrilled. They were absolutely thrilled. And she didn't know. She said, oh, I thought this was a kind of odd thing for him to suggest on a Saturday. I think it was her birthday as well. But yeah, so I think my most unusual thing is a proposal. And I had to be there, but I was not meant to be there, if that makes sense. But it was very nice, very, very nice. And she did say yes, which was good. So when you got the clock tower, you have this panoramic 360-degree view, and my most favourite view, everybody has different views, mine is facing southwest, looking towards Salford Quays, Media City, the sea. They say on a clear day you could probably see to the coast, which is 30 miles away. Manchester Town Hall is often used as a filming location. Most famously, it's used as a body double for the Houses of Parliament in London or the Palace of Westminster. You can't film commercially in the Houses of Parliament, but you can't just film for news coverage. So anything that you have TV series or films that require Houses of Parliament type scenes, they tend to come and use the Town Hall. So recently, very, very recently, the end of 2011, The Iron Lady, the film about Margaret Thatcher, a lot of that was filmed here with Meryl Streep, because the corridors are very representative of what you get in the Palace of Westminster. So that's been filmed here. Sherlock Holmes was filmed here. Manchester Town Hall is my most favourite building in Manchester, but if I couldn't pick this, or my other favourite buildings would be, in no particular order actually, I think Chetham's Library, which is the medieval building by the cathedral, simply because it's so old and so unusual. It goes back to 1421, and that's just a gorgeous little hidden gem of a building, just stunning. Another Victorian building would be John Rylands Library, late Victorian, again stunning, absolutely amazing. Similar but very different to the Town Hall, but it has a real sense of drama, and it's a place of learning, and it's very symbolic. So John Rylands Library, and I think right up to date, sort of 21st century, it has to be for me the Civil Justice Centre in Spinningfields. I never fail to be amazed by it. It's that huge sheet glass window, and it's stunning. And it's, you know, modern architecture is, we're in the Town Hall, which is Gothic and full of sort of drama and detail, and you look at something like the Civil Justice Centre, and from the outside you might say, well, it's very clean and minimalist, but it has a different type of detail to it, because modern engineering is different. So yeah, so I think my top three are Chet's, John Rylands Library and Civil Justice Centre.